Best.
It's my brain. Okay, here we go.
Can't unhear it.
This is a show about the 500 albums that Rolling Stone says are the best, and we're gonna talk about them ad nauseum. This is a show about the 500 albums that Rolling Stone says are the best, and we're gonna talk about them ad nauseum. This is a show about the 500 albums that Rolling Stone says are the best, and we're gonna talk about them ad nauseum. This is a show about the 500 albums that Rolling Stone says are the best, and we're gonna talk about them ad nauseum.
Welcome to Backwards Beats. I'm Carl Carter Fansteel.
I'm Dan Woodard.
And welcome to episode 1, track 500. So, if you didn't listen to our intro episode, here's the gist. Rolling Stone magazine, you've heard of them, put out a list of the top 500 albums a la 2023.
That's right.
Great.
That's the version we're following. Yeah.
And we'll be following this version. We probably won't stick too close to anything if they update in the future. We'll acknowledge it.
Right.
However, we're going to listen through all of these, so maybe you don't have to. Or maybe for the optimists out there, you can join us. Whatever this serves, we're pretty happy with it because we're two friends and musicians who get to enjoy talking about some albums that we probably have never heard.
Yeah.
Some albums we probably have heard.
100%.
And I think most interestingly, the ones that we think we've heard and hearing them with new ears and or, I don't know, I intend to mature through this process.
Yeah, completely. The purpose of this is for us to try to listen to everything that we can with new ears, right? There's some songs or some albums that we're just going to know and love
Sure.
or know and not love.
Also, sure.
Right? But maybe taking this time, even for the ones that we know we don't like, maybe we can look at it differently and find the good in it and try to be as positive about this whole experience as possible.
I think one cool thing about this entire project is that there's the notion of like reference.
Yeah.
You know, the first few will be very hard to judge, but once you're 20, 30, 40, 140 songs in, we'll be comparing them to each other inevitably. So happy to embark on this assignment with you, my dear friend.
Yeah.
And if you want more details on that, listen back to the intro track. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Album number 500.
This is the album Funeral by the band Arcade Fire. And so this is a band that I completely slept on, to be honest with you. But Arcade Fire, for a little bit of history, they formed in 2001 in Montreal, Canada. And it was a combination of Will Butler and, I'll try to say her name right, Regine Chassaing, I think is how you say her name.
Cool.
They're a couple, and then they brought in the Wynn's brother, Bill Butler, and then eventually grew into a much larger group after that. And this is their debut album. It came out in 2004. And one interesting bit of trivia, I guess, on this, so since I knew nothing about this, I had to do some research. So obviously the album's name's kind of bleak for an opening first album by a band. But
Funeral, sure.
Yeah. But it was sort of inspired, I guess, by a bunch of personal tragedies that happened right before that. So 4 band members lost family members. So Will and Wynn lost a grandmother. Regine lost her grandmother. And one of the other members, Richard Perry, who plays, well, we can get into it, a lot of instruments, but guitar, lost his aunt. So a lot of the writing in this album sort of reflects some of that loss. So the album name is fairly apropos of their experience, but not really a positive sounding opener, but
Which, if you're expecting a morose 10-song album, you didn't get it at all.
no.
This thing screamed celebration a lot of the time.
Yeah. There's a lot of nostalgia in it.
Oh, no doubt.
But
So I think, one of the things is we figure out how we're going to trek through this music, and how our path is,
Right.
Poor listener over here has to hear every thought, Have you ever heard this album before?
not until we decided to do this podcast.
Have you ever heard the band before? Not heard of, but heard.
I did, and I was fairly dismissive. So they performed, I think, a couple times on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
And so, as you know, usually I think I saw them perform as after Weekend Update, and it's kind of the who cares part of Saturday Night Live, and they come on, and I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Oh,
and,
totally.
And I went to bed. So
I, too, am guilty of
Yeah.
being like, oh, that's some indie stuff I don't care about.
right.
And lessons are already being learned, at least in Camp Carl over here on album number 1.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating album.
It really is. It really is. I mean, if you think about it, the first, 5 songs? Well, 4 songs. 4 of the first 5 songs. How about that? Maybe I get my story straight. Have the same title.
Say 'em.
Yep. With subtitles, obviously, but
Neighborhood, number 1. Neighborhood, number 2. The third song abandons entire straights there, but then
Right.
you get song 4, Neighborhood number 3, and then song 5, Neighborhood number 4, and then of course subtitles behind them. You can look them up yourself.
yeah.
I overall, having listened to this album, I don't know, 5-6 times, think that this is appropriate. Here's why. It does feel like an album that you could easily split in half.
Yeah.
In mood, momentum, just the compositions. I would even make the argument you could split this in almost thirds. I would not call them even thirds, as it is 10 songs, but it's not very square.
Right.
There's a moment where all the energy shifts, and then there's a moment later where it all shifts again.
Right.
I really liked that about this composition.
Yeah. I mean, if this were a record in the olden days on vinyl, which it probably was.
I'm sure it's pressed to vinyl.
Yeah. It's definitely a side 1, side 2 kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how they split it up, but it makes perfect sense. The splitting song number 6 in this particular case.
I was going to say, which one do you think it splits at?
Yeah.
That's exactly where I would.
And that's where the vibe splits, and that's where if you were to call the beginning a concept album, because there's threads of similarity through them, not just in their title, but in some of their makeup, their lyrical content.
Loosely, like not in the
Yes.
way like you call like a Mars Volta album,
Yeah, it's not the
concept
wall.
album.
It's not the wall. It's not Tommy.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's definitely themes that permeate through the whole thing. And
Important early episode liner note for listeners: Dan and I do not discuss this album beforehand.
no,
We're pretty hellbent. We went out drinking before this, and he played an open mic, and we kept loose, like really, no, not loose, tight-lipped about the entire thing. We have not spoken about this album yet together, so I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that A side, B side is dead on.
yeah,
So, Arcade Fire, 2004, freshman album.
yep,
They come out, and this album to me is very inspired. Now, I don't know about the composition of the band, less what you've already told us.
right,
Here's some instrumentation things that struck me. They can't perform without an orchestra behind them, or at least a good chunk of string players. Am I wrong?
There's a lot of orchestra on here. There is one performer on here by the name of Sarah Newfield, who plays violin on this as an accompanist and then joins the band later.
Sure.
But there's definitely a lot of accompanying, orchestral music.
Plays the violin. I'm about to say, there's very few songs on here that feature one violin. Everything has a string section, it seems to me. It's
Yeah.
like saturated.
For the most part. And everyone in this band are all multi-instrumentalists.
I'm not surprised at all. I heard Glockenspiel. I heard accordion.
Yep.
I heard. I mean, this album is rife with different sound sources. I wouldn't call it a timpani because it's offensive to a timpani, but one of the songs they have like a marching beat to what just sounds like an old crappy loose bass drum.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just a simple pulse, but it really added to the soundscape.
Yeah.
This is a band that's not afraid to explore instruments.
Not at all. Or even, I think, celebrate their influences.
Who would you peg as their influences?
Well, I think there's a handful of them. But I don't agree with this completely. But the reception of this album was pretty interesting. And I'll get to the influences.
According to whom?
Well, there's a lot of lists that they got on.
The lists.
They got on lots of lists. Well, they obviously got on the 500 best albums list.
Yeah, but like they weren't on like the no-fly list.
They weren't on no-fly list, no. I think it was, I don't know, maybe a Metacritic list or something like that, but it came in number 2 of the top 10 most influential albums of the 2000s. Second to Radiohead Kid A.
Are you also asking yourself how you and I both miss this as a guy who's familiar with Kid A?
Yeah, and I don't know that I can't put them together because I love Radiohead. Like, and Radiohead was a big part of at least the 90s for me. And so they were already in my heart when that came out, even though Kid A was not well received when it first came out.
Sure.
But posthumously, everyone got it eventually.
Fair enough.
So, and to be on that list is interesting because overall sales, worldwide sales are 1 million copies of this album,
which is nothing.
Not, I mean, Kid A was only about 3.5 million. So
I'm just saying a million copies for 2004.
Right.
Not horribly special. Now, how many were stolen at advent of the internet?
Right.
Napster that was kicking off then, or
Yep.
LimeWire was whatever it may have been.
Yep.
This is not a widely celebrated album on the pop main stage.
No, it's not Thriller.
It's also not Kid A.
It's not. And I don't know that they were saying that they're the same. It's just that it's funny that it came second to that. That's all. Like, I don't think the list is saying, oh, this is almost as good as Kid A.
I'm not even a Kid A fanboy.
Right.
Like, for the listeners out there, do not get me wrong.
Right.
You won't catch me hyping it. I think Kid A is as broken as it is good. It has a place in my heart, for sure.
Right.
And luckily it does, because this could have been an album I'd never even heard of.
Right.
Instead of Kid A.
Right.
I think that people are comparing the wide array of sound sources used here
Yeah.
to kind of scoop that up. Production-wise, I'm actually a little underwhelmed. I look forward to our hate mail. What's our Gmail?
Oh, a Backwards Beats podcast at gmail.com.
Great. You can talk shit to me there about my production notes here. This is the one thing that I felt I had the biggest struggle with.
Yeah, me too.
Is when you have this many instruments and layers of voices and 3 guitar tracks layered on top of each other, a pretty cool soundscape. You're doing neato things like stacking stereo violin harmonics.
Right.
This production was quite lackluster. When it all said and done, I did not, which is a massive mistake for me tonight, because I thought we were recording this tomorrow night, look at who produced it. And I'm not crapping on them. They didn't do a horrible job. And for 2004, I don't even know what tools were used. But in comparison to like a thing like Kid A, which was heavily digitally driven,
Yep.
you're not getting high marks from me.
Yeah. So it was produced by Arcade Fire and Howard Bleierman, but I don't know. I didn't do any research into Howard's,
Howard, if you would like to talk to us sometime about this, we would love to bring you on.
Now, I'll say one positive thing about the production is it's even though it's 2004, it's kind of a 90s production.
It is. Overdriven preamps, raw. They're not afraid to show space. Not a ton of reverb saturation. Certainly not digital.
And definitely not compression wars, bricked.
And thankfully.
Right.
And you know what? Here's me giving back a bone. Maybe my ears are so trained to it nowadays that, it did feel thin in that sense.
Yeah.
But we're not listening against other albums from 2004 right now.
Right.
We're not perfect. This is just our read right now.
Yeah.
And come to think of it, I think I might go listen to some 2004 this week just to kind of see how it adds up. Because maybe it was a wonderful time. I will say stereo panning was used very well.
Yep.
The way they stacked vocals was used incredibly well. As you'll hear later in some of my feedback, some of the rhythm section stuff, players aside, I thought that the balance was great.
Yep.
And whoever was producing it knew how to mic their sound sources.
Yes.
I think I just feel like I lacked saturation, or like for something as so emotional of a ride, I wanted more depth. I wanted to feel encapsulated.
I feel like everything was put in the background, right? And drowned in reverb.
Precisely.
Right. Not every track, but there's a lot of reverb on this album.
And it wasn't, I said earlier, it wasn't digital reverb, but
Right.
man, they embraced the room, didn't they? As Dan's like bubbly water,
Yeah.
12 o'clock.
Yep.
Overall, though, a pleasant listen on the ears, not hard to listen to by any means.
Not at all.
And if you were to look at like, I guess, cohesion between tracks, like it's a clear picture.
Yeah.
You're not jumping from one mood to another, or one sound source. Nothing jumps out as jarring ever. Like from song one, actually, it was so funny. I was walking my kid yesterday in a stroller. He was having a hard day of naps, and it was like noon. I couldn't get him to sleep. He's 18 months old, and it was 12:15, 12:30. I was like, fuck it, we're going to the car. Drove him over, walked this nice little shaded path with him in the stroller, fell asleep immediately. So I was like, all right, I'm listening to this album, so binge it. And I looped it 2 times yesterday. And it's so funny. They show you their whole hand. It's like they're playing poker face up.
Yep.
First song. Here's all of our vocal tricks. Here's all of the instrumentation we'll use. Here's our orchestra. Here's that plucky, chimey bass tone.
Yep.
I mean, they just gave it all to you. You know what you're getting into from the head.
Yeah. And their arrangement chops. These are well-arranged songs.
How so?
Well, I mean, if we want to go into the first track, right?
After this break.
Okay.
Hey there, music lovers. Are you ready to take your snuggling game to the next level? Have you struggled to find the perfect blanket to match your music vibe? Do you dream of rocking vinyl pants with ease and comfort? Introducing Vinyl Vibe Snug Wraps, a unique creation made from recycled vinyl records, offering the perfect blend of classic vinyl and ultimate comfort. These circular blankets with customizable center labels take you back to the days when vinyl was king. Imagine wrapping yourself in the smooth feel of vinyl. Worried about sticking, sweating, and chafing? Fear not. Our blankets are treated with Hydro Hug Gel, a patented gel derived from deep sea algae that prevents the dreaded vinyl chafing and keeps you feeling groovy, so you can snuggle up with your special someone without worrying about those sticky side effects. Just pure, unadulterated comfort, like the smoothest tracks on your favorite record. Cozy vinyl snuggle blankets. Vinyl never felt so good. Get yours today and turn your cuddle sessions into a groovy experience. Custom center levels are available for an additional charge.
So Dan, tell me about the first track.
Track number 1, Neighborhood number 1, Tunnels. And actually, it starts right off, drenched in reverb. And there's this opening piano riff that goes on, which actually, unfortunately, reminds me. Have you ever seen, you know how on YouTube Fandango shows like movie clips, and then when it's done, it says watch more clips and it has this little jangly piano piece?
I don't know what you're
Okay,
talking
well,
about.
we have to watch that because unfortunately, it reminds me of that. Not that it's a
earworm.
Yeah, it's not that it's a bad thing, but we talked about the arrangement, and the song opens with that piano piece with guitar coming in. It's a very nostalgic song, and one of the things I actually liked about the song is it's about tunnels, right? And it's about these, I guess, kids who like live near each other. And I'm going to build a tunnel
To your room?
right?
Yeah.
And so the girl lived next door to me when I was like from second grade through high school. She was like a sister to me, and we actually talked about doing that when we were kids. So I'm like, oh, hey, I had a friend next door too that we wanted to do tunnels. So that caught me.
It's so nice you have like that innocent story.
Yeah.
My mind during that, for some reason, went right to American Beauty and the girl just showing her boobs through a window to the kid. I don't know why.
There's that, and there's definitely
That's a tunnel too, in its own sense. Like it's like a connection across, houses,
right,
and it's intimate.
But what's interesting though about that, so there's definitely an element of that goes in there because the song progresses, like as they're sort of chasing their dream or whatever's happening, but they kind of lose focus over that dream, lyrically as they do it. They forget all the names of the kids that they were going to, now we'll name, what's the line? Then we'll name our babies, but we can't remember
the names.
Right,
yeah.
whatever that is. But another interesting arranging trick, this is very intentional. The song starts off at 110 beats per minute and gradually speeds up at certain points up to about 130 beats per minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet my friend Dan Woodard. And this is the things that he hears that most people don't. Say more.
But it brings this energy forward, brings you through this journey. As I can just envision these people like running away together and just running faster and faster as the song speeds up. But it's not that they're rushing. This is very intentional.
No, I hear that. And
Yeah.
it's so smart in the sense that, we're sitting in my recording studio right now. Literally, I get paid to record people. You don't see that. Like, that's not common.
Everyone records to a grid now.
Exactly. And furthermore, dudes sitting in my seat are encouraging them to, because it's easier for me.
Right.
So he goes, I want to speed it up here. And you're like, we're never going to execute on this. Like, realistically, we've tried to do it in our groups and layer different successes, but that's so rare.
Right. Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
It tells a story.
It does. Yes, it fits in there nicely. A couple other things, like harmonically, this band isn't super sophisticated, but they know their music theory. Like they do use some choice chords every once in a while, which gives them interest, but it's not like unattainable.
The word I chose that I thought I could like hang my hat on, if like all else failed, I already knew you'd be like 50 times more prepared to me, so I'm taking a different angle here, is patience.
Yeah.
This band can exercise patience. Specifically the bass player.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I could go blind at this, but it's like picked P bass down the middle, and I respect that. Like, just it gives you a formula and it gives you a foundation on which to lay the storytelling, which we've already determined is pretty good.
Yeah.
This is, at the end of the day, a concept album to some extent. I think we'd agree.
Yep.
Though it's not in any of the cheesy or novel ways. The songs don't have to necessarily fade into each other, or the story. You're not listening to who does it well, like Coheed and Cambria.
Right.
They were like, this is a comic book in an album. This is not that.
Right.
But it's cohesive enough. It really feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that's interesting, I didn't go this deep into it. I listened to this one time in front of a piano, so I did pluck out a few different things. But if you talk about the storytelling, this song then essentially, it doesn't transition. It's not a playthrough. The song ends. It goes into track number 2, which is Neighborhood number 2, and I think it's that. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's Laika.
Laika?
Yeah,
I'm calling it Laika.
Right, and that is named after the first Russian dog that was shot into space and orbited the Earth.
Sick.
Which is cool. Which is apropos of the lyrical content of the song. I don't know if you paid any attention to it, but the song tells a story of the singer's brother who went away on an adventure. And it sounds like that adventure kind of gets out of hand.
Sure.
Over time. But what's really interesting to me, and so right before we started recording here, we just did a quick 15-second, just so we could ground ourselves in the songs, 15 seconds on each song. And I asked you to listen for a little bit longer on the intro to this one. Because the intro to this one takes me through 3 places before it actually lands where it needs to go. So there's a high, I don't know if it's a guitar or a mandolin or ukulele. It's a high little guitar part that sort of comes in. I think it's a guitar. Which at first made me think of Every Morning by Sugar Ray.
Da-na-na-na-na.
Yep. I don't know why. It's only like 2 notes.
Shut the door, baby.
Yeah.
Don't say a word.
Right. And then the accordion comes in, and now I'm in Bare Naked Ladies land.
Well, so the accordion was a big one for me. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, we're those people now.
Right.
Let's go.
And then enter the Talking Heads.
Yeah, agreed.
Like vocally, it's definitely an influence.
I mean,
feel
vocally, this album is doubles on triples.
Yeah.
And I'm a yell singer. Like, that's what I do. So I should appreciate this specifically this gentleman.
Yeah.
Which I do. I really do appreciate what he's done here. They are not afraid to sing their mind.
No.
I say they because there's the female singer as well,
Regine, yeah,
who's here quite a bit. And Lord knows if I didn't do the research, but I'm sure some other band members will chime in at time to time.
Yep.
This is sing your heart out music.
Yeah, they're not afraid of necessarily going off keys sometimes too.
I'm also pretty sure they're not aware.
I think it's for the feeling, for the emotion. I don't think it's that they can't hold a tune. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I think that there's just some time you got to yell a phrase.
Yeah.
And they lean into that.
And in this song, Regine comes in the background, and then with some shouty vocals, which now I'm thinking Pixies.
No, that's it. Oh, you beat me to it. Yeah, beat me to it.
Sorry, man.
Beautifully done. Yeah. Beautifully done. No, we're hearing it the same way. So we get through the first 2 Neighborsode series, and we walk into the 3rd song of the album. It's so funny if you look at, play counts, which I try not to focus on too much, but we do keep the Spotify screen on for this. I think it's really fun data to look at on the fly.
Yep.
Your first song will always be a hefty hit because it's the first song of the album. It gets its little advantage. You watch it tick down just a scotch, right?
Yep.
So we go from the 17 million over Neighborhood 2 down into, do you want to try and say this?
I can't speak French. I think it's Un An Sans Lumière, which is A Year Without Light.
There it is. That's exactly what it is. I was going to try to impress you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We want to do it again?
I took French.
Okay, so can you pronounce it?
Je ne comprends pas. Okay. So, yeah, this one drops down to 12 mil, and I'm just shy of 13. Mm-hmm. I'm so saddened by this.
Yeah.
'Cause this is a great tune.
So my note that I took the first day might be my favorite.
Yeah. It's in my might be my favorite as well.
Yeah.
Category as well. What struck you?
Well, first of all, if this came out 2 years before, it would have been on the soundtrack of Lost in Translation.
Ooh, good one.
And that movie has vibes for days.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And so it just feels good. And I'm guessing this song has a lower play count because half of it's in French.
Sure.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
It's the whole second half of it. Yes.
Right. But I think it's a really nice song overall. And oddly enough, so I like to make connections between songs. So this is a weird one. There's a little bit of an intro guitar part that then, I don't know if you ever listened to Lifehouse, but they have a song called Sky is Falling.
No.
And all of a sudden, I felt that a little bit. Mostly at the beginning, it's a strumming pattern. But the other thing I like in this song is there's one drum fill at the beginning. It's like a very Ringo drum fill.
It is.
It's like a perfect homage. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's a total Ringo fill, and it fits perfect.
To me, this is like a really unpracticed band tried to do Coldplay. And they got a little groovy with it.
Yep.
And I really liked that. And I know it's not a great comparison. However, they're using the same amount of space, and that's what I want to highlight here.
Yep.
Also, they didn't lean into the French Cafe thing, and I'm so thankful for that. No one needed a bossa nova track here.
No. And they actually they do play with a little bit with harmony here. They do some modal interchange stuff. They do some 4 minor, some flat 6 for all you music nerds out there. But I kind of like, the end has this sort of solo. I call it kind of a solo, instrumental feature.
I'd say it's a feature.
Yeah,
Yes.
that rather than a solo. And they hit like this diminished chord that just really kind of fits in. And it's sort of an ambiguous chord change at the end, harmonically ambiguous, but then they hit this diminished chord. It really just feels nice when they go in there. And again, the ending of the song speeds up.
This is where I will say my piece.
Okay.
I look at these songs when you look at the instrumentation and the melodies, and then even some of the harmonies as compositions, not rock songs.
Right.
Holy shit. Can you ground me quicker and take me out of that sophisticated mindset by putting a drummer in who plays Boots and Cats on every goddamn song? It's the one bone I have to pick as a drummer core here.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a great beat.
Yeah.
3 or 4 times it did not serve the song. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Because the bass never changed this entire album. This dude's always playing eighth notes, pick down, up, whatever. But this drum beat has to stop being featured. Like, it's the one bone I can pick. Now, with that said, if I was at a live show, that beat is what serves it up. That's what gets your crowd jumping and bawling out, right?
Yep.
But I meant to do a hard count one more time of how many times we got on drum set.
Yep.
I didn't do it. But I'd be willing to bet it's 70% of the songs, 7 out of 10 songs. I'd be willing to bet we hear that beat.
Yep.
Fight me.
No. I mean, they have one song that's I think it's in 6/8, so that one doesn't. But other than that,
exactly. Yeah. Like it's I'm wondering, and it's the funny part is it's not always like a pea soup open hi hat.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a close.
Yeah.
It's like they can't help but play that groove.
Right.
Which at the time I remember a lot of bands were doing that thing. It's gonna kill me. I can't name 3 off the top of my head, but I will come back with them later in this podcast. But that was kind of the indie beat at the time.
Yeah.
It was Super Dashboard, pre-Mumford. You get these 2 or 3 year rhythm pockets.
Yeah.
And this was obviously that one. Was it OK Go? Was that the band who always did the really cool music videos where they're like in space and gravity?
Yeah, I think so.
That helicopter beat.
Yeah.
Like it was the thing to do.
Yeah.
It kills me, Daniel. It kills me.
Yeah.
Let's finish off the first half of the album.
This song actually doesn't have that in it, but
I know.
But
I'm just saying,
but
as things build,
coming soon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Here we are in a neighborhood near you.
Yeah. Power Out. Mm-hmm. Now this does not start off with that because it starts off with a tom-driven beat.
Oh, I actually really like the groove.
Yeah.
On this song.
Yep.
It's the most original drum beat that hits in the entire album.
Yep. A little bit more Talking Heads in this one.
Totally.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's syncopated. Like thank you.
Yeah.
And the energy's there. It's the first time we've really felt energy, in my opinion, since I don't know the first song.
It might be the most aggressive song on the album. I mean, there's some faster songs.
Later, like Rebellion's got some pretty hefty throws in it, right?
Yeah. But I think that has a little bit more of an uplifting feel to it than this one. This song here, it's interesting. I did a little bit of looking into this one because like a lot of stuff around snowstorm, and there is a thing about power outage, and I think there was some power outage in Montreal that this might have been based off of. A bunch of different things. I don't really know. I guess it's all speculative anyway, but I was trying to see if there's anything specific. There's a really cool kind of music video to this one, which I dug up. It's all animated, and then people running through the snow, but there's like some police stuff going on. And
is this like the official video?
Yeah.
They release it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool video. But I think it's metaphorical and ambiguous, but
funny, if you look at the listen chart, only 21 million on this. I say only because some of their toppers are in the 120s.
Yeah. But it's what is it, like number 4, I guess?
Yeah, it's song 4.
No, but also 4 in the quantities.
Yeah, I guess it does track down. Man, they really pop where they pop, and then the whole thing flattens out.
I mean, hey, they have which one? Yeah, this one 21 million. Yeah.
They'll be just fine.
It's 1 more million plays than I have.
They're making their
on
car
Spotify,
payments.
so yeah. Yeah. So there you go. The other thing I kind of like this one is It's, again, a little harmonically ambiguous. I mean, not really. I mean, it's like it starts in D minor and then goes to D major and then F major. It bounces around a
I
little
like
bit.
that part of it. That
Yeah.
to me was like, oh, there's a clever play.
Yep.
On, taking this out of like some weird, like easy 4-chord indie progression.
Yeah.
They really were able to nail that.
Yeah. 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 And even the minor might be ambiguous because I think they're just playing like power chords, but melodically, I think it's minor.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. And then it definitely gets majory, but it's I like this song. My note was this song slaps, and I stand by it.
I like where it stands in the album.
Yeah, I agree. Because we kind of mellow out a little bit.
Indeed. There's some pretty significant peaks. There's 2 kind of defined valleys in this album.
Yep.
It's where I landed at the end of the day, and I'm by no means an expert, as you can tell. But this was kind of the pickup after 3.
Yeah.
Leading us into neighborhood number 4, otherwise known as 7 Kettles, which is a huge change in mood.
Yep.
And a really peaceful and zen-like song to me.
Mm-hmm.
You get some good duo singing going on here.
Yeah.
You get a very digestible chord progression and a really sweet build in this song.
Yes.
Dead center in the album.
Mm-hmm.
It's place 5.
Yeah, this is the one we did talk a tiny bit. I shouldn't have said this out loud, but this is the one that kind of reminds me of Van Diemen's Land by U2.
This is, I acknowledge that at the table.
It's barely there, but I mean, I then plunked around a little bit like, why does this remind me? They are both in the key of G.
Well,
oddly
like
enough,
U2, this one has a soundscape supporting it as well.
Yeah.
That jerk off stuff the Edge does to kind of like create, little reverberations and kind of like a stereo soundscape. They embrace that here.
Yep.
And couldn't have been at a better time, frankly. It's a great palate cleanser for this album. And I feel like it's a great way to dial your ear back in and hear the story.
Yep.
They say some stuff here.
They do.
And I mean, look, you can play that whole, not to do the spoiler, we invite everybody to listen along with us, but one of the lines has something to do with, you can't watch the pot, watch the kettle, water boil. Yeah.
Yep.
They kind of play around that heavily for
Yeah.
a while. And there's a good message there. I love the phrasing though. They're really taking their time.
Mm-hmm.
And the music matches the message.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is where the album changes.
Yeah, because we're on side 2.
I think
At least
so.
metaphorically.
Also, just sonically,
Yeah.
Crown of Love is nothing like anything we've heard.
No, very moody.
We'll be right back.
Listen up, buttercups. This is Sergeant Smith, and I've had just about enough of you delicate daisies whining on about how water is too boring. You prance around with your fancy flavored and scented waters. Oh, this has got a hint of cucumber. It's infused with lavender. Well, listen up. Do you think when I was in that Hanoi hellhole, I was asking if my water had a hint of citrus or notes of springtime freshness? Hell no. We drank straight out of a mud puddle, spit out the twigs, and got on with it. You don't need 50 flavors. You need to sack up and drink some water. Plain old water. You're thirsty? Grab a glass, turn on the tap, and stop acting like you've got it tough.
Welcome back to Backwards Beats. We're halfway through discussing the album Funeral by Arcade Fire, a 2004 release. And we're entering song number 6, Crown of Love. Talk to me, Dan.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot on this one. I like it. This is the song that's in 6.
It's a ballad.
It's a ballad, yeah. It's very moody. Kind of, I don't know how to place it. It gets very raw.
Sure.
Like vocally, it does this.
I'm gonna say it. It feels like it's mimicking like a Buckley song a little bit. Am I wrong? Like
Yeah,
a Jeff Buckley,
sure.
like that, like kind of like chunk emotion. Like I can see the prototype.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say
don't-
it's derivative, but definitely inspired. How about that?
inspired's a great word.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's the best way to describe it though, and it's a hard turn from where we've been.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a mistake, by the way, on their behalf, because up until now our songs have been called Neighborhood 1, Neighborhood 2. There's the French one. You want to say it again?
No. I stole your fire.
Well,
so.
no. Now I'm embarrassed. I can't
All
do
right.
it.
All right.
You don't put me on the spot on there. I'm just gonna punch us in. You're here like neighborhood 3, neighborhood 4, and then we turn a corner.
Yep. Yeah, I actually, oddly enough, I don't have a ton to say on this one. I liked it. I might have repeated this one more than others.
Like you replayed it.
Yeah, except that this is one of the songs. There are a handful of songs on here. We haven't really talked about this that do a sudden speed up at the end. Like it's another part. They either go into double time, or this one speeds up at the end as well, which is pretty interesting. There's one speed up that I don't like. We'll talk about that. Not on this song, but I like the place they go vocally. I guess that's the best I can say about this.
Okay.
Yeah, from an emotion perspective.
So be it.
Yeah.
Well, out of Crown of Love, we move over to song number 7, Wake Up.
Yeah.
I'd say that the title matches the theme here.
It does.
The drapes match the carpet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, you know who else would say that? 150,221,187 listeners. This is a heavy on the album. Actually, it's the heaviest on the album.
It is.
This is the tune.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this was the number one hit for them off of this one. They didn't have a number one hit, I don't believe, but I think Rebellion might have come in higher in sales, but certainly on this, I could be making that up. But yeah, it definitely has the biggest play count. And I think I really like the guitar tone on this one.
Me too. This is the one that I actually think that their instrumentation, vocals, their sound fits the most.
Yeah.
This seems like, all right, if you're going to show yourself off, go for it. And I mean, numbers don't lie. Ironically, second longest song on the album too.
Yeah.
Not conducive to radio play at 5 minutes and 35 seconds.
Yeah. Well,
And nowhere to clip. There's no fat here.
in my opinion, there is.
Oh, talk to me.
So, well, before I do that, the other thing I like songs that the way the song starts off, you think it's going to go at a certain tempo, and then there's a bit of rhythmically ambiguous drums that come in, and then it goes into it's a halftime feel. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel like it's going to be a halftime when it starts off.
Sure.
So I really like that about the song. And there's a bit of a shout chorus in it,
There's not a bit. There is a shout chorus in it.
but in 2004, were shout choruses all that they became? Or is this, did they get a pass?
Oh no, this created shout chorus along with the initial wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not crapping on the shout
Yeah.
chorus.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of a shout chorus.
Yeah. This got a little bit overdone for a bit. We've pumped the brakes a little bit now.
Totally.
But,
we've let that one settle. But this, I think this served the
it's
song perfectly.
Especially for the subject matter of the song, right?
Totally.
Basically, this is a little bit, I mean, there's definitely a political sort of vibe to this in your wake up,
I'd say.
kind of thing. And yeah, I'm not crappy on the shout chorus at all.
Well, we were talking about those peaks and valleys earlier too, kind of, and coming off of Seven Kettles and Crown of Love.
Yep.
This is literally the wake up one needs.
Yeah. And there's definitely another, like Wynn's vocals definitely escalate through this song.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You're able to get both the vocalists in,
Yeah.
because she's kind of like hidden for half the tracks on this album, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
Yeah, she's not featured.
not featured in like the first 2 or 3. It feels like.
Yeah, she doesn't actually get featured until the next song. But the place where I say there's fat here is this is another song that has the speed up, that I just don't like.
Yeah.
It has.
What did you compare it to?
It's "Can't Buy Me Love."
Can't Hurry Love.
Can't buy me love. No, you
No, it's
just
Can't Hurry Love. Can't Buy Me Love. Can't Buy Me Love. Right. Can't hurry love. Oh, you just have to wait.
We might have to.
Yeah, we'll edit that. You get the free pass.
All right, we'll do
but
it.
It is, but it's that old song. It has that boom chicka boom, swung.
Yep. And it does that until the very end, and then it turns into "Lust for Life" in the very end, because I think he shouts out, "You got to look out for love," and it goes into that. So I'm not digging that
gracious.
vibe.
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, they're allowed to mishap this deep end, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But no, it's a massive wake up call, and like I said, a listener favorite allegedly.
Yeah.
If you look at this, I wonder if it was featured in something. That'd be a fun side segment.
Yeah, should have Googled that.
What made this pop off at 150 million listens?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to song number 8.
Whew. The song's heavy.
I'd say.
Yeah. So a little bit of backstory on this. So Regine Shashang, I can't remember how to pronounce her name. I apologize if you ever hear this. So her parents were born in Haiti.
Okay.
And they fled the Haitian dictatorship in the 1960s. And actually, Arcade Fire have donated $1 for every ticket sold at each concert since 2005, raising over $4 million for the people of Haiti.
Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty sick.
Arcade Fire.
There you go.
Very good, dude.
So for this song, I have a lot of feelings about it, because this one here, we talked about the production before. I hate the production of this song.
It's just not my cup of tea.
It's not a bad song. I like the song, and I know what they're trying to do. So the song has a bit of a Caribbean vibe that's going on. Mm-hmm. And again, it's actually somewhat harmonically ambiguous. It's a 2-chord song. It goes from a major chord to a minor chord.
Yep.
And just bounces back and forth.
And they sing both thirds at some point in time.
Right. It's mostly a major melody to give that feel. But in the soundscape, there are essentially sirens ringing throughout the whole song.
And these sirens, the same way they were treating harmonics on some of the orchestral strings earlier. Yeah. Now, they do this on purpose. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how many times you heard it in this album. It's sneaky. I caught y'all. These little chromatic runs that they do over seemingly standard pop or pop rock.
Yep.
And to call it a run is almost funny,
Yeah.
But they do it.
They're embellishments, at least. Yeah.
And they're not by mistake.
No. These people
you don't
know what they're doing.
accidentally sing chromatic.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. And these notes, I say they're sirens. Sometimes they actually manifest as almost an actual siren. Could actually be a siren.
I think I heard what you're saying there,
yeah. But what they do is they start playing this tone, these keyboards and other sounds that, well, the first thing is the vocals are mixed below everything else.
Significantly.
Right. And that can work. I mean, Love Will Tear Us Apart Again, Joy Division, there are songs that do this. Everything in Its Right Place by Radiohead dips in and out of that, but it dips out of it. Eventually you can hear the lyrics. Mm-hmm. Tool is known for,
just buried.
I'm just going to bury it. I'm no different there. But here the reason I don't like it is that what they're covering it up with is irritating. And this is where you listen to this song matters.
Okay.
In my opinion.
I hear that. In full disclosure, right? So, what were your sound sources for most of your listens, or how did you listen?
So I listened on essentially studio monitors. Okay. I listened on AirPods. I listened in the car, and I have some noise canceling Sony headphones.
Gotcha.
Right, and in certain instances, I think it's the mixing. It was an intentional choice to mix the volumes low, but the sound choices they did, I just found it wasn't the note that was played. I think they're playing a 9 over the chords or something like that. So it's or the 11 depending on which I think is what the
major minor here, sure.
Yeah. Whatever it is, depending on what you're doing. And that's intentional, and I think it's supposed to be irritating. I just think the mix wise in certain sound sources I found uncomfortable. And I think it's supposed to be, but I didn't like that. I don't mind dissonance, but in this case I just felt
that's not dissonance, that's dynamic.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
If you're on the top 500 albums proclaimed, right? I do expect Ooh, look at me setting standards. Episode 1.
Yeah, I know.
But I do expect to some extent, like, some respect for, like, we're gonna talk about production kind of a lot because it makes or breaks art. You know, like, we think about how much just absolute repetitive pop sounds fantastic nowadays.
Right.
Like, I'm like, oh, what is this? And then you listen to it like one more time, and you're like, man, this is boring as hell.
Yeah.
But the production's actually what was the net over the content or over the progression or whatever it might be. In this case, it's almost the polar opposite. It's like, there's an interesting song here. Really wish it was a touch more balanced. In all fairness, though, if you listen to, I mean, this is one of the songs that features Wynn's performance, right? Like, she's kind of prominent.
Regine, yeah, she's the lead
I'm
vocalist.
sorry.
Yeah.
Regine.
Yeah.
This and song 10, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like you could have given her a little more presence.
Yeah.
It's one thing to let a person treat a microphone like this or like this, right? Like, I'm moving all around my microphone. It's another thing to, like, say I'm going to take responsibility as the producer to capture that action and serve this song.
Yep.
She's got a pretty unique voice.
She does.
You'd think you'd get that a little more respect.
I think it's lost, even though I think it's intentional, because I think, like, the lyrics are, I guess, rebellious in nature, and the sirens are drowning her out.
That's a generous and artsy take.
That's,
I got up from the back of my chair to say that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one way to look at it, right?
That's one way. The other way to
it
look at
it just doesn't feel good to my ears, is the unfortunate
rebellious to me is screaming at me in a bullhorn.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, say what that will, but
Yeah.
one way or another, there's a cool song idea here for sure.
Yeah, I actually think I like the song, but I don't like listening to the song.
Man, that's a wise statement.
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna go
bet
back and listen to that
I bet you live, I'd be all about it,
So I bet you live,
because they can't do that. Yeah,
just like, this isn't even remotely spoiler, but it's like, if you told me tomorrow, like, hey, Arcade Fire is going to come over to the Fillmore and do Funeral in its entirety, I'm buying tickets.
Yeah,
because I feel like this album could be lit live.
yeah,
I feel like it would be so fantastic. I don't feel like the production tells that story per se, and frankly, they don't seem pretentious at all in this.
No.
I don't think they thought this would make the top 500. You know,
No,
like,
they're
I think they're really telling a story, and they're using great instrumentation to do it. And this song is a risk that they're willing to take.
yeah. No, and I applaud them for it, like 100%.
Well, while you're applauding, let's move on to the 9th song of the album.
Should we gently transition into it as this song does into the next song?
Oh, it's the only one that does on the album, as far as I know.
Yeah,
it rolls on in.
A kick pattern, and those sirens kind of permeate into the next song, which
Well
is
done, sir. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Teaching, it's all about transitions, right? But no, so, you know, I think I made a quip about concept albums rolling song into song. This is the only time it actually really hits that, doesn't it?
Yep.
Rebellion, parentheses, lies, sits at 120 million listens.
Yeah.
So another crowd pleaser, just a mere 30 mil under its friend Wake Up.
Right.
But still highly respected. Another song that I feel like suits this band incredibly well.
Yeah. This is a good song.
I'd say.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's the only time the Boots and Cats, to me, is my favorite. That's what I play, you know?
That's all it takes.
I hate to be that guy, but man, it's so true. What are your takeaways?
A couple things. Again, they play with those modal interchange chords, but when they do this, so the flat 6 chord is a chord that, used well, can be a beautiful thing, or it can be overly melodramatic.
Sure.
And they use it several times throughout this album. It's never melodramatic, and one could say that a song about rebellion is inherently melodramatic.
Totally.
Right. And I think like the second half of the chorus is interesting. It's kind of hard to tell at first because of this modal interchange.
Well, the first time you hear it, you're like, "Oh, what happened?"
Right, right, because it's going like from B major to B minor, then it hops down. Like it's not really, or B flat. I think it is actually. Sorry, I don't want to get called out.
I did not sit in front of my keyboard for this one.
So, and the other thing that's interesting here. So there's the strings start to come in, and it becomes a theme later on. But right before the second verse, at the very first listen, it sounds to me a little bit like Robert Fripp's guitar part in Heroes by David Bowie.
That's incredibly specific.
It's very specific, which is a fantastic song, and I don't think that it was intentional. It's just something that dug into my skull, and I hear it every time now, and I can't unhear it, and hopefully you hear it too, but I thought that was kind of cool. And then it goes on through, and just like I talked about their arrangement, and we never actually mentioned it, but back in the very first song, I said it started with that piano lick, right? Which then gets recapitulated at the end in the vocals.
At the end of the first song.
At the end of the first song. And here, this string line eventually evolves into a motif that they start doing at the end. It gets that gets featured with. I think there's vocals that go along with it.
There are.
Yep.
They lean into this stacking choral effect.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the better, really here. I mean, you're headed towards end of the album.
Yep.
You kind of have to have these apex moments.
And this one here also, that melody line, it's not the same, but this is the one. I think it's interesting. It reminds me of the song Thought Contagion by Muse, which came out much later.
Oh, wow.
Came out in 2018. And Thought Contagion, lyrically, is fairly similar. Thought Contagion is about misinformation. Mm-hmm. And this is about rebellion and taking care of the lies. It's kind of interesting. I doubt that Muse were inspired by this at all, but I thought it was just interesting that melodically that string part and vocal part reminds me a little bit of the intro of that song, or kind of the hook of that song. And again, like lyrically, they're similar.
Fantastic.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, wow. That brings us to the last tune of the album.
Yeah.
In the Backseat.
Yeah. Literally. Lyrically.
There's a great story here.
Yeah.
It's a cute song. It also, like, cute's a poor choice of words.
Yeah.
This is a song that made me feel like a kid again.
Yeah.
And I was a little humbled by it. And she's not saying anything prolific. She's just reminding me of flavors that I felt as a young person. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so sweet. And to have it in this, like, super crazy high timbre, and lightly drizzled onto the end of the album. Yep. You always got to wonder, how's someone going to end the album, right?
Like Bjork.
Do you go out with it? Yeah, kind of, right?
Right? Her voice in this mind.
It's Bjorky.
Yeah.
But it's something else too.
Yes.
It's very much theirs. It's in the same spirit of the entire album. Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting choice that they gave to her.
Yeah. And, I think I didn't pay a lot of attention to the lyrics, but there's definitely, I'm in the backseat of the car, I'm learning to drive, but it's actually, I'm coming of age. That's what I kind of got out of it.
Yeah. I got some of the similar vibe. I chose to take it on a more innocent route, just out of personal preference.
Yeah.
I think I needed it.
Yeah.
There's something very beautiful about, looking at, the landscape and then falling asleep. There's something peaceful I think I required.
Yeah.
That met my mood there. And, you don't expect that out of kind of some of the huge emotional, loud moments they had to let this album down very gently.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful ending to the album.
I think so too. And this is an album that in total just hits sub 50 minutes, like 48 something, right?
Yep.
10 songs. It feels like an hour and a half listen. In a good way.
Yeah. Yep.
In a good way. I came into this album judging the name and what I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
like all of us would. Honestly, like we're all judgy. Fuck. But after a car listen, which I didn't find very enjoyable, and then 2 close range listens using AirPods and headphones, I really found pleasure in this album. I think it really is a mood-oriented album.
It is.
I'm not going to clean my house to it.
No. Or go to the gym.
That's right. I could grocery shop to it. And I feel like I could walk to it and just ponder.
Yep.
I think it invites you to kind of get outside of your head a little bit. Because there's nothing so prolific at any point in time going on that's mind-bending, right? Like, we're not seeing alternate time signature type of stuff. Chord theory here, though appreciated when they decide to like do some cool bends, they're modular. Everything is on the 8, you know, like it's a smooth listen all in all. I could listen to this waiting, like if my Southwest boarding position is B23, I could turn it on and as we're taking off get to like, you know, Rebellion.
Yep.
And maybe as I'm allowed to put my tray table down, you know, get to the back seat. And that's a smooth lesson for me. Ignore the masks coming down and all the other directions. Ignore the people around me and just kind of melt into this album. I could get into that.
Yeah, I agree. This is after mediocre to lame day at work with a 45-minute commute. This just takes you out of that and puts you in another space.
So that begs the question, because we do have to wrap this up at some point.
We do.
What was your favorite track?
I had initially put the song I can't pronounce, Un Sans Lumerie.
You did that way better than me.
Yeah. I'll just call it A Year Without Light.
Hey.
I initially put that. I guess I'll stick with it. I'll just go with my gut on that one. It's hard for me to actually pick.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I was torn. I have decided on 7 Kettles, Neighborhood 4.
Nice choice.
I think it's just so beautiful. It's so still.
It is.
They still do some really cool musical stuff. This is where you saw some of that.
U2 song.
Yeah, no, it was the use of the soundscape.
Yeah.
My man, I would love to remaster this one, honestly.
Yeah.
But the storytelling was so fantastic, and I do think that there's some really clever musical movement in here, sneaky stuff.
Yeah.
You think they're playing very conventional chords, and they're not. The melody, there's a little bit of chromatic work. There's some shifty stuff going on here. And I love the way that it settles the album dead in the middle.
Yeah.
It was just a very zen moment for me. So the big question here is, would you hit it? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time we're talking about this. Explain the concept of hitting it, Daniel.
Would you hit it? Right? Would you listen to it again? Would you put it in your rotation? Would you put it on this list?
I'm going to say one thing before I give you my answer.
Okay.
Which is, because this is album 500, aka episode 1, I think for the first 10 albums, we should answer, but reserve the right to maybe change. It's the same way with like you're judging a battle of the bands. You
Correct.
need to like see a couple more to like put them in comparative value.
Oh, that second band was amazing. And then by the time you get to band 10, it's like, who's that second band?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that said, tentatively, would I hit this? Yes, I would. And that is a changed man speaking. I was not that guy walking in.
No, me either. And I agree. I would hit this.
I think one of my tributes to said hitting something, if you would entertain this, I thought about it today. I think if I'm going to decide we're going to hit it, I think I'm going to go try and seek a vinyl copy of the album for this entire project.
Wow.
So if we hit it, it makes its way into vinyl copy in our hands. How cool would that be?
And then there's more gravitas to the decision.
Yeah, well, it's like a trophy.
Yeah.
We listened through it, we liked it, and then we own a copy of it. It's very strong for us.
Yeah. I like that.
Long-winded as it is, we appreciate you, the listeners, so much for listening through our thoughts on this album. And as we perfect our system, we welcome all of your feedback and thoughts. Dan, how do you reach us?
So right now we're on Instagram at Backwards Beat Podcast. You can get us at our email address, backwardsbeatspodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. I'm Carl Carter Fansteel.
I'm Dan Woodard.
Thanks for having us, and we will talk to you on album 499.
That was a show about the album Funeral by Arcade Fire. With the orchestra and reverb, we would listen again.
Backwards Beats Podcast is a Tunawood production recorded live at Thought Shack Studios in Halethorpe, Maryland.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us at Backwards Beats Podcast on most platforms.
Share the love, and we'll see you next week for another deep dive into the next album on Rolling Stone Magazine's Top 500 list. Until then, salt your melons.